The story begins in 1941, during the war between Germany and Russia. Whenever soldiers from either side spotted each other, they would immediately try to kill one another. At that time, we see a Russian soldier named Nikolai, who is passing through a war zone with his comrade Vasily, arranging food and supplies for their unit. While moving through the area, Nikolai notices a German signboard. In a fit of anger, he breaks the signboard. But just then, a war tank, part of an enemy unit, appears behind them and starts attacking. Nikolai quickly jumps into the truck and rushes towards the tank, hoping that the tank would take time to turn. However, as they pass by, the tank gets ready to fire at them. Nikolai tells his comrade to count from 1 to 4 loudly. As Vasily counts, the tank fires after 4, but Nikolai skillfully dodges each attack. However, on the last count, the tank doesn't fire immediately. It waits to lock on target. But even then, Nikolai outsmarts it and manages to avoid the shot. The two of them safely escape back toward their camp. Then the scene shifts to the woody headquarters in a village called Nefyadovka, where we meet Captain Mikhail Karen. Shock. He is reporting to his superior that only one tank is left in his battalion, and that too without a commander. Karen himself is seriously injured and unfit to lead, but his commander tells him that he must fight till the last breath. With no other option, Karen orders his remaining troops to return to the battlefield. At that moment, Nikolai arrives and reports to the captain that their kitchen truck has broken down because they were attacked by a tank. But they survived. The captain asks him, "Are you a tanker?" To which Nikolai replies, "Yes." So the captain appoints him as the commander of the last remaining tank. Their mission is to cover the retreat of the echelon and hospital before the German army reaches Nefyadovka. Nikolai is given a Monard, damaged T-34 tank, whose previous commander was killed. He is ordered to delay the German advance, with only one tank and a handful of infantry soldiers. The soldiers are doubtful of his leadership since it's his first day on the front line. But Nikolai tells them he graduated with distinction. He scolds them for being lazy and careless in preparing the tank. He warns them that to him, their whining and fear is cowardice, and if it continues, there will be punishment. He orders them to prepare the tank and load as many shells as possible. After that, Nikolai and Sergeant Gabulia create a plan to outsmart and ambush the Germans. Once their plan is complete, the T-34 tank heads out on its mission, aiming to reach the village before the Germans arrive the next day and launch an attack. The next morning, we see Commander Klaus Jaeger, who is leading a unit of 8 German tanks. He soon surveys the nearby village and, seeing no sign of resistance, orders his soldiers to advance. But what the Germans don't know is that Nikolai and his crew have already set up an ambush. As soon as they spot the German tanks approaching, Nikolai and his comrades begin loading their tank, preparing for attack. But Klaus Jaeger gets suspicious that the Russians are planning something, so he stops. Meanwhile, Sergeant Gabulia, along with some of his men, creates a fake tank out of wood and scraps inside a small hut and rolls it outside. Klaus sees this and assumes that Russian tanks are hiding behind the hut, so he orders the rest of his tanks to attack that area. As the German tanks move in to strike, Nikolai takes advantage of the distraction and blows up 2 of them. Soon after, Klaus spots their real position and orders his tanks to turn and engage. But before they can fully respond, Nikolai destroys a 3rd tank. The remaining German tanks quickly return fire, and Nikolai orders his crew to reverse and retreat to a secondary position. From there, they destroy a 4th German tank. Then Sergeant Gabulia orders his infantrymen to open fire, killing several German soldiers on foot, which forces the remaining tanks to pull back. At this point, Nikolai takes out a 5th tank, but once again, the Germans find his location, and the soldiers surround him from all sides. Nikolai immediately orders his crew to start the engine and escape, but just as they're about to break out, another German tank blocks their path. But Nicolia blows him up too without wasting any time. But during this time, another tank attacks them, so they start to run back. But Klaus, who had been waiting until now, attacks the T-34, and as a result, some metal pieces hit their driver, and one soldier also gets injured. Despite the damage, the rest of the crew refuses to give up. They restart the T-34 tank and begin to escape again. On the other side, Sergeant Gabulia, lying injured on the ground, gives a final order. A nearby Russian soldier obeys and places a grenade inside the barrel of a German tank. When it explodes, that tank is also taken out of action. Now only 2 tanks remain, one commanded by Klaus and the other by Nikolai. The final duel begins. Both tanks fire high explosive shells at each other. The big explosion shakes everyone, and both tanks get damaged. Half of the Russian tank crew is killed. Nikolai survives and tries to save whoever he can. He pulls a severely wounded driver, Stepan Vasilyonik, out of the damaged T-34. At the same time, Klaus also climbs out of his Panzer tank, wounded, and fires at Nikolai. But due to his injuries, he collapses and falls unconscious. Just then, German soldiers arrive on the scene and capture both Nikolai and Stepan. After that, the scene shifts to 3 years later in 1944. A train stops at a station near the Th3 concentration camp. Many prisoners are taken off the train. They are all Russian prisoners. A German officer is the jailer, and there is a translator named Anya who helps them communicate. The jailer says, "I am your death. You cannot escape from me. All prisoners, bow in front of me and remove your caps." Most of the prisoners bow down and take off their caps, but one prisoner remains standing straight. Seeing this, the jailer gets angry and points his gun at him. He says, "Why didn't you bow? Tell me your name and rank." Translator Anya pleads, "If you want to save your life, please tell him the truth. Otherwise, he will shoot you." Then it's revealed that the prisoner is none other than Nikolai. Nikolai knows very well that the guns of that time often jam when fired in the rain, and that's exactly what happened. When the jailer pulls the trigger, the gun jams. But still, the jailer beats him badly and sends him to a separate cell for torture, trying to force him to reveal his name and rank. He is beaten for several days. In the next part of the story, we see Klaus, who is now preparing to fight in World War II, but he needs a good team, trained soldiers, and working tanks. He asks his senior commander for permission to use the captured Russian prisoners for his team. The senior officer agrees. Klaus then visits the jail and checks the record. That's when he finds out that 3 years ago, one Russian soldier destroyed 8 of their tanks using only one tank. And it turns out that soldier is Nikolai. Klaus goes straight to Nikolai and says, "Do you recognize me? My team told me you're here as a prisoner, but if you agree to work with me, your punishment can be canceled. But there's a condition." He says, "We captured a tank in the war. It's a T-34, but it's in bad condition now. If you fix it and train my team on how to drive it in war, I will get your sentence pardoned." But Nikolai refuses, because he could lose his head, but he would never bow his head in submission. Then Klaus gets angry. He points a gun at Anya and says, "If you don't agree, I'll shoot her after counting to 5. Anya starts crying and begs for her life. Seeing this, Nikolai finally agrees. The next morning, Nikolai is told to choose his crew from among the other prisoners. He selects 3 men. Luckily, one of them turns out to be Stepan Vasilionich, the same soldier who had fought with Nikolai on the previous mission. The 4 of them are introduced to a tank, the T-34, one of Russia's best tanks, fast to drive and deadly in combat. This very Russian tank had once defeated German Panther tanks on the battlefield. Nikolai is given a task. He must repair this broken tank within 1 week so they can take part in a training test. But there's one condition: no shells, ammunition, will be kept inside the tank, and they cannot leave the training ground. When Nikolai goes inside the tank to inspect its condition, he finds the dead bodies of Russian soldiers who had died fighting against Germany. There is a strong smell coming from the corpses. Then Nikolai spots 6 large armor-piercing shells, powerful enough to destroy any tank in one shot. The German soldiers have no idea that these 6 shells are still inside the tank. Nikolai sees this as a golden opportunity. Using his wits, he goes to Klaus and says, "There are 6 dead bodies inside. As a soldier, I believe they should be buried with honor." So, while taking the bodies out, he hides 1 shell with each body, wrapping them inside their clothes. Then Nikolai and his team bury all 6 soldiers along with the hidden shells in a stone grave located at the edge of the training ground. Now it's time to fix the T-34. All 4 of them work with full dedication. Since some of the tank's parts are damaged, they secretly replace them with parts from other German tanks. At the same time, Nikolai is full of anger, and he begins drawing a full layout of the training ground in the dirt, planning something big. Stepan looks at him and asks, "What are you trying to do? There are so many soldiers and tanks here. How can we possibly escape? This sounds like suicide." But Nikolai, with his sharp mind and fierce determination, gives them hope. "One day will come when we will escape from here, alive." That same evening, Klaus calls Nikolai to his room. Anya is also there as the translator, so the German and Russian soldiers can communicate. Klaus says, "I know your preparations are going well. Your tank will be ready soon. Before we begin war training, there are some important things about this place that I want to explain to you." He starts explaining the layout of the area and talks about where the T-34 should be positioned, but Nikolai suggests a different location, the same place where he had hidden the armor-piercing shells with the bodies of the Russian soldiers. Klaus likes this strategy and praises Nikolai's previous stealth battle skills. After finishing his talk, Klaus puts the map of the area into a drawer under his table and locks it. But both Nikolai and Anya had already seen the map, and they knew it could be the most important thing to help them escape. The next day, Klaus asked Nikolai to demonstrate the tank's performance to see if it's ready for the training. Nikolai and his crew test the tank, and the Germans are shocked. They've never seen a tank move and turn so fast before. Later, when Anya meets Nikolai, she gives him bad news. "Klaus doesn't fully trust you. He's placing anti-tank mines all around the training center." Nikolai asks, "What plan? What do you mean?" Anya replies, I know everything. You're planning to escape from here. Please take me with you. Nikolai refuses and says, this is too dangerous. You could get killed. But Anya says, I don't want to die here. I can steal the map from Klaus's room. Just take me with you. Finally, Nikolai agrees to her request. The next morning, Klaus prepares his German tanks for training, while on the other side, Nikolai tells his crew, this is our last day here. We have to give it everything we've got. He orders his teammates to secretly take out the hidden armor-piercing shells from the graves and put them back into the tank. The crew quietly slips them in from underneath the tank. Meanwhile, Anya sneaks into Klaus's room while he is away at the training ground. She quickly opens the drawer, steals the map, and leaves before anyone sees her. During the training, Nikolai and his crew set the training ground on fire. The smoke becomes so thick that the German tanks can't even see the T-34. Using the smoke as cover, Nikolai fires an armor-piercing shell. It directly hits and destroys a German tank. Seeing this, the superintendents and commanders panic. They had thought this was just a training drill, and these Russians didn't even have real weapons. They quickly order the other tanks to destroy the T-34 completely, but Nikolai and his crew move swiftly, changing positions and heading straight toward the headquarters. Klaus spots them and shouts for everyone to escape, but it's too late. Many German soldiers are killed, and only Klaus and Guderian survive. Outside the training ground, the Germans had planted anti-tank mines underground. Any tank rolling over them would be instantly destroyed. So Nikolai finds a different route. He drives straight into the parking area where the German officers' Mercedes cars are parked. He crushes all the Mercedes cars under the T-34, then charges toward the main gate with his crew. The German soldiers try their best to stop them, but they fail. Klaus, frustrated and helpless, pulls out a small pistol and fires at the tank, but a gun that can't even scratch armor-piercing steel is useless against the T-34. The tank smashes through the main gate and escapes. Outside, Anya is already waiting for them on the road. As they reach her, she hands Nikolai the stolen map. It would help them escape from the region. At this point, Nikolai has only 4 shells and enough fuel for 30 kilometers. But thanks to the map, they learn that 20 kilometers ahead, there's a small village where they can get food, clothes, and fuel for the tank. The crew reaches the village, where they gather bread, clothes, fuel, and even some police guns. Before leaving, they burn their old prisoner clothes, leaving that part of their past behind. Just as they're enjoying their stolen supplies and leaving the village, they suddenly encounter an anti-tank blockade, armed with a towed anti-tank gun. But on Nikolai's quick command, Stepan makes a sharp left turn, just in time to barely escape, though the tank suffers a deep dent on the right side armor. They take the jungle route, successfully avoiding German troops and gunfire. Meanwhile, back at the base, Klaus is being scolded harshly by his senior officer. It was your idea to include enemy soldiers in our squad. Now look what happened. They used your help against us. Klaus replies firmly, I won't let them leave the country. Just 6 hours away from where they were was the Czechoslovakian border, where the Russian army was stationed. Klaus decides to track them from the sky and cut off their escape route. He soon learns that they are moving through the forest, but both he and Nikolai know that to reach Czechoslovakia, they'll have to pass through one final village. After driving for a few hours, Stepan tells Nikolai that the tank is starting to overheat, so Nikolai gives the order to head toward a mountain pass, where they can spend the night. They go off-road into the woods and stop to rest for a while. There, the crew spots a lake or a pond, and they all take a moment to enjoy their freedom, bathing in the water, relaxing, and finally feeling human again. Meanwhile, Anya prepares dinner by the campfire. At the same time, Klaus returns to the mission. He can't spot the T-34 anywhere, so he takes command of 4 Panther tanks and sets up an ambush in a small village called Klingtal. On the other side, Nikolai makes a plan. He tells his crew, reaching Czechoslovakia alive won't be easy. Klaus will probably have his big tanks blocking the way already. What if we hide the tank in the water and everyone escapes separately on foot to the border? But no one wants to leave Nikolai or the tank behind. They say, we brought this tank all the way here with our own hands. We won't let it sink now. We'll all fight together. With the tank, Nikolai nods, then tells them to get some sleep. We move out at 4 a.m. That night, something changes between Nikolai and Anya. They share a quiet, intimate moment. Their emotional distance has now turned into closeness. But the calm doesn't last. Suddenly, one of the crew hears tank engines in the distance. He rushes to Nikolai and wakes him up. Nikolai gives the urgent order, we have to leave right now. This time, however, Nikolai doesn't take Anya with him. He tells her, go on foot through the forest, head east. Meet me near the meadow by Klingtal. but only move at night. If we don't arrive by the next night, assume something went wrong. Nikolai and the crew say goodbye to Anya, and then they leave in the T-34, heading into the unknown. But when they arrive at the village, there is complete silence. Nikolai immediately understands. This is definitely a trap, because such stillness in a village usually only happens when civilians have been evacuated just before a battle. Realizing this, they change their route. But little did they know, 3 tanks were already lying in wait, including Klaus's Panther. That's when Nikolai comes up with an idea. If we can distract one of the tanks and ram our tank straight into the rear wall at 20 kilometers per hour, we can avoid the other 2 tanks' fire. But the question is, which tank to distract? That's when Volchik, one of the crew members, says, "I'll distract them." He grabs a grenade and runs straight toward one of the enemy tanks. The fog is so thick that nothing is clearly visible. One of the enemy tank commanders opens his hatch and stands up. Volchik seizes the moment and throws the grenade inside the tank. The explosion was so powerful that not only did it kill the enemy soldiers, but sadly Volchik also injured. As the other tanks got distracted, Nikolai drove his tank full speed into the back wall. The other 2 tanks fired their shells but all missed, and the T-34 escaped. However, as they rammed through the wall, they crashed into a Panther tank waiting on the other side. Nikolai quickly manually rotates his damaged tank, and just as the German tank prepares to fire, he fires a shot first, hitting the Panther's ammo rack. The explosion shakes both the Panther and the T-34 crew. At that moment, 2 more Panthers appear. One of them takes aim at Nikolai's tank. But then, a shot is fired from a captured German tank. It's Volchik. He fires a shell and destroys the 3rd Panther. The crew is confused. Who did that? Nikolai says, only Volchik could have done this. Volchik, badly wounded, tries to aim at Klaus's Panther, but Klaus quickly fires back and destroys the captured tank, leaving Volchik severely injured. The group quickly targeted Klaus, but Klaus was quick to return fire. As their shells collided and missed each other, Klaus climbed out of his tank. Nikolai asked for 5 minutes to carry the wounded Volchik to safety. After those 5 minutes, the 2 tanks faced each other across a bridge. Klaus's tank was loaded with many armor-piercing shells, and he began firing relentlessly, like a storm of bullets. Below, Stepan skillfully drove the T-34, maneuvering so well that many shells missed their mark. With the last shell, Nikolai aimed at Klaus's tank tire. There was a huge explosion, and Klaus's tank was pushed to the edge of the bridge. But during this, Nikolai's tank was also heavily damaged. Klaus, wounded, dragged himself out of his Panther, while Nikolai aimed a stolen rifle at him. Klaus shouted, "Shoot me!" But Nikolai canceled his plan to kill him. Impressed by Nikolai's bravery, Klaus extended his hand, and the 2 shook hands with mutual respect. Nikolai tried to help Klaus up, but Klaus let go of his hand and suddenly fell down with his tank. He died on the spot. Nikolai and the remaining crew lifted the injured Volchik onto a makeshift stretcher and finally reached Czechoslovakia. There they found Anya waiting for them, and that's where the movie ends. So friends, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified. And don't forget to like and share this video. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.